Americans are potentially creating the new economic threat with their own savings, according to CNN, which we'll read here in just a second, which is why I'm reading over here so I can see exactly what the headline looks like. It's an interesting take, and this is what I've been saying for many moons, that if we go to a Japanese model where we're reducing consumption and saving more, that's bad for growth. It's bad for inflation. It's bad for interest rates. It's just bad across the board in terms of traditional mechanisms of how we look at growth and things of that nature. I'm not so sure it's necessarily bad from a perspective of, what's the word I'm looking for? Individual freedom, individual security. If you're not consuming as much, that might be a more stabilizing influence. And it kind of goes back to the book from John Waters, the Irish writer, Waters, John Waters, Give Me Back My Old Roads, which you should read. I haven't read the whole thing yet, but man, it's one of those things where you're consuming, especially if it's built on a foundation of sand via debt. That might mean a short-term economic boon, but is that sustainable? So let's read this, because this, I think, is interesting. I'm not there yet. I'm not sure we're here yet, but this is from CNN. Look, I don't trust CNN as far as I can kick them. I don't trust Fox News as far as I can kick them either. So for you who think you shouldn't follow Fox News or faux news, FAUX, just boring. But anyway, there's always some good articles out there. This is a good one from Matt Egan. Not familiar with him. Dateline 12 May 2020. A couple of y'all sent this to me. Americans are slashing their spending, hoarding cash, and shrinking their credit card debt as they fear their jobs could disappear during the coronavirus pandemic. U.S. credit card debt suddenly reversed course in March and fell by the largest percentage in more than 30 years. At the same time, savings rate climbed to levels unseen since Ronald Reagan. Dramatic shifts in consumer behavior reflect the unprecedented turmoil in the U.S. economy caused by the pandemic. The pandemic is not what caused the turmoil. It's the reaction to the pandemic. Although caution is a logical response to that uncertainty, hunkering down also poses a risk to recovery in an economy dominated by consumer spending. A so-called V-shaped recovery can't happen if consumers are sitting on the sidelines. Yeah, I completely agree with that. Russell Price from Ameriprise says consumers are very cautious and we're right in the middle of a storm. The unemployment rate soared to 14.7, the most severe unemployment crisis since the Great Depressions, and Americans are bracing for more challenging times ahead. The perceived probability of losing one job over the next year soared to nearly 21% in April, which was the second straight month of the record high for this metric. Oh, man. Workers are also worried about if they land another job. Could not agree more. The perceived probability of finding a job in the next 3 months tumbled to 47%, the largest monthly decline ever. Credit card debt collapses. So let's read about savings boom. The consumer that constitutes the beating heart of the real economy is preparing for a much longer slowdown than what policymakers are telling them, says a chief economist from RSM, a consultancy. For now, Americans are building cash reserves to help them get through the storm. The savings rate in the U.S. climbed from 8% in February to 13.1% in March. That was the highest savings rate since November 1981, and given the disastrous economic news, the savings rate will likely go higher when April statistics are released. We'll dive into that a little bit. The shifts in consumer behavior are another reminder of the pain Main Street often gets lost given the near euphoria on Wall Street. The market has raced back to life since late March as investors have celebrated the response from the federal government and signs of hope on the health front. All right. So let's see what else. Okay, that's pretty much it. So basically, I find it, so they're paying down credit card debt and they're saving more money. In fact, I find it interesting because the savings rate in the U.S. climbed to from 8%. Where we had an 8% savings rate before, because before everyone was about ready to go to the welfare line, right? Because we weren't saving enough. The savings rate in the United States climbed from 8%. That's much higher than anyone I've seen. I mean, the St. Louis Fed, this is reporting this, St. Louis Fed, it was like 6% before. And then you throw in your 401k match if you have one, but then you throw in your Social Security and your employer match on Social Security. That's a pretty good savings rate, frankly. In fact, in my book, down there, you can retire on Social Security. I talk about that. I talk about it, and here's my book right here. I talk about that a lot, about the savings rate and the silliness that says we aren't saving enough because Social Security is a forced savings program. And because you have to pay, it's actually 6.2 for your Social Security. The rest is for Medicare Part A. But because you have to pay 6.2, your employer has to pay 6.2. Inherently, that's a 12.4% savings rate. And if Americans are saving 6%, which is what the St. Louis Fed was saying before, that's an 18% savings rate, which is historic on the higher end. So the whole thing is just weird. But no one is saying about 8% back, like, oh my goodness, 8%. If Americans were saving 8%, that's pretty good. I don't remember people saying, yay, party, we're saving 8%. But if we're saving 13.1, hey, that's probably an anomaly. But it could be devastating from a V-shaped recovery for the economic growth that we are hoping to get, which again is built a lot on consumer spending and debt. And so if Americans are saving more like Japan does, and we're going to save more simply because as we age, the demographics consumption shifts from consuming to saving. It's just that simple. Japan again leads the way here. The reason the Japan growth rate is so low, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's not necessarily a bad thing. I just cannot stress this enough. Just because the growth rate is low doesn't mean they don't have an abundance of products and stuff and services that they want to spend on. They don't. I'm not saying it does. I am saying, though, from a traditional economic model, which is growth at all times, less than 1% growth is doomsday scenario, especially when you have unfunded liabilities of Medicare, Social Security, and Medicaid. We need more growth to fund those things, and the way you get more growth is more consumption, more velocity in the economy. And if we go to a more saving, that will reduce velocity, reduce consumption, reduce inflation, reduce growth. And it's going to be it's a new dynamic. It doesn't mean it's bad or good, but it simply means the idea of what we're accustomed to for the last 75 years. We better start getting used to maybe not having that. Now, again, this is just 1 month. Time will tell, but we shall see. We shall see. But it's good to think about. All right, we'll see you guys.